This will be the final video in the series to complete this tray. And today what I'm going to do is work on, fixing some things up, glazing. I'll probably show you more than what I'll actually use. I'll probably remove some before the end of this video and go back at it, but at least you'll know what I've done. So I laid out some colors on my palette. These are colors that were used in the piece, but I also added a violet and a turquoise. I don't know if I'm going to use them or not, but I just put them out because know that you can glaze with any color. Some people will say you can't glaze with white, but in fact I have done it many times, so I think it is possible. I set out a few different brushes. I've got 3 different size mops here to help me smooth things out. Just a couple of different shaped brushes. There's a filbert and a couple of flats. Palette knife in case I need it. And I like to use liquid when I'm glazing. You can use just the painting medium, but sometimes it loosens the paint quite a bit, and maybe more than what you'd like. And the liquid shortens up the drying time quite a bit. So in addition to that, I've got some solvents because I'm working with oil. I've got my thinner and so on. So that's my that's what I'll be working with. I'm just going to set it aside here, and we can look at the tray. So a couple of things. First of all, with the border, I took out the cross hatching. I didn't like it. It was more than what I wanted on this tray. And in fact, if I was just doing this for myself, I probably would not have any of this border on the piece. I probably would have left it off and just gone with the gold trim. Hard to say. It's a matter of, personal likes and dislikes. Sometimes I do a lot of border on things, and other times I do very little. So I did clean the border up a little bit. I took out the cross hatching, and I also replaced some of the lines that I put in initially with dots. In fact, I have a lot of dots. That's to try and help discourage the eye from focusing on any one little section. So I'm going to use glazing probably to camouflage this a little bit, take it down a notch. It's a little bit too much for me. And I could use glazing on the outside edge. Maybe I'll show you how to do that, but likely I would probably remove it. Mostly I glaze the inside of the piece, and for different reasons. On this one, I would like to darken some of the outside area of the bouquet, and I'd like to bring out the light in the middle. So I can do that with some glazing. I also lost, because I was painting this so quickly, I kind of lost a lot of my alizarin crimson, which is a color that I adore. It looks good over on this leaf, but I guess it does on some of them. It's mostly the yellow-green leaves where I seem to have lost it a bit. That one I could add some here. So first thing I'm going to do is take my liquid. I've got a little container here, and it's kind of helpful with the to have it in a container like this. And I'm not going to glaze this whole piece for you. What I'm going to do is show you the glazing, and then I'll give you a picture of the finished piece, and you'll be able to assess where I added the glazing and I didn't. When I'm glazing anything, I always glaze with my darks first, and then I go back and I add my lights. That way, if the light runs into the dark, that's a good thing. If dark runs into the light, it doesn't work the same way. So I'm just going to take a little bit of liquid on my brush, kind of blend it in. Now I'm just going to do, I think what I'll do is work on one half, and then you'll be able to see the difference. And I'm not sure which half needs more than the other. I'm going to say that I'll work on this half here. So let's say I wanted to glaze some of these leaves. You could do, 2 or 3 at a time, but I wouldn't I certainly wouldn't put liquid on the entire piece and then expect it to be workable for too long. It does get sticky fairly quickly. Mind you, it takes more than a day to dry, but it gets sticky quickly. So there's some liquid on those pieces. I'm going to pick up some alizarin crimson on my brush. And now, not very much, very, very little on the brush. And I wanted alizarin crimson on the outside. If you go back to that very first stroke work, or the video where we did where we painted this, I wanted some alizarin on the outside of that curved vein, on what I call the dark side of the leaf. And I also wanted some around the end, or the tips of the leaves. So you can see I just kind of put that in like so, and then I'll come back with my mop. And this is where I can dust it in, work it up. You'll see it. This one especially turned out pretty good. This one I'm going to remove a little bit of it. And that's the beautiful thing about glazing, is that you can just lift out whatever it is you don't like. In fact, you can take the whole thing off at the end if you're not happy with it. So I just want to take some of that alizarin out of the center here. Just going to come back with my mop and make sure that I don't leave any lines. Now, that makes quite a difference to the leaf. I hope that it's visible on the camera. The other thing you can do is, if you want to set the leaves apart from each other, what if I set this one, well, I better get some paint on my brush. I could set this leaf apart from that flower. I could set this leaf apart from the leaf on top of it, and I might darken that a little bit. I could separate these. So again, you don't have to worry about how you put it in, because you can just take your mop, and if you kind of push up towards the color, when you put your liquid on, make sure it's a thin coat. If you get too much liquid, you'll find that you have to play with this too much to get the paint to move without leaving lines. Maybe a little bit too much in there, but you see, that's where this comes in handy, because I can just come back and take a little bit of that out. That's better. So I think you can see the difference between this set of leaves now, for example, and these two, or these over here. Let's look at these other little leaves. Let me put some liquid on. I've still got liquid in my brush, so there's enough there to work with. And here I don't need to do too much with these. I could separate them a bit from the leaves that are on top of them, but I would do very little, I think. Sometimes you can really overdo it. If you had a smaller mop, you might find it easier to get into these little spaces. I just pulled out the ones that I saw real quick in my brush case. So again, I think you can see the contrast between these now and, let's look, if you look over here or over in here, you'll see that these look quite a bit different. So let's just continue on. I'll do some of these these yellow flowers. And basically kind of do the same thing. Now I've got a bit too much liquid there, but you see, all I have to do is take my cloth and just get rid of a bit of it so that not too much to work with. So again, because I separated these from the ones on top, I would have to do that throughout the entire piece. Now I always don't do that. Quite often I just leave it, but I'm just trying to show you options here. So because I separated all of that, I would have to separate these from the leaf, which appears to be on top, and separate each one of these from each other. So you see, you can make a lot of work for yourself, but it's easy work. I think glazing is, I actually find it kind of fun. Not unhappy with that. Now the other thing is I've got all those other colors that I showed you on my palette. I'll maybe just continue here. I'll do this leaf and I'll do this flower, and then that will be this section glaze. So let me just do that, and then we'll work with now. I will tell you just something that you probably wouldn't think of, but you can see obviously on the video, I'm assuming, that this is leaving quite a shine, and it changes the appearance quite a bit. When it dries, this will dry a little brighter than the rest of it. So usually after I've glazed something, I let it dry, and then I come back and I use liquid, and I put a very thin coat of liquid over the entire piece and let it dry. So that works actually as a final varnish or a sealer, and it also gives me this exactly the same sheen over the entire piece. So I have the liquid on the flower. I'd like to darken the back of this flower a bit, so you'll see. And I could separate these. I could darken in between the petals a bit. Again, be careful not to overdo it. You want to be able to see those original strokes. This is a stroke work piece, but the back of the flower should be darker. And when I darken the back, you'll see that it makes the light areas appear to be lighter. So again, just use my mop to kind of soften all that in. It's kind of easy, really. And the shadow is on the underside, so I have to make sure you put it in the right place. A little bit too much of a line here. So what I'll do is just come back and soften that, you see? And then it won't look so liney, so much like a line. So by deepening the back, I hope you can see that it makes the light areas look lighter. So sometimes I come back in and I'll glaze with a little white, and I'll show you how that works. But whether or not this one needs it, once you put the darks in, you may not need the lights. But this is just a little white on my brush, and I'll just come back in. Oh well, it does look nice, doesn't it? I'll just come back in and sharpen the light there. Again, don't overdo it. I could come in here. I'll show you something that's kind of a bit of a trick. If I wanted to have this petal appear as if it's bent or folded, I can just put some of the white in the middle, the center area, and then come back. And you can see now that it has a bit of a, if I do it there though, I've got to do it here and maybe here. So you see, you can make a lot of work for yourself, but, and I don't always do this. I have to be in the mood to do it. And if you have a light color in your mop, you want to make sure that you clean that out before you try and glaze with your dark color, especially white, because it will make things pretty chalky pretty fast. So just a little patience. I find this really calming because it's not difficult. You just have to take your time. So now you can see the lights here look so much lighter than they do over here. That's two reasons. I did lighten them a bit, but also by darkening the space in the back or the top of the flower, you can see that it causes the light to appear brighter even though it isn't. Now again, I could separate. Having put that white in there, I should have done this first, right? I told you do your darks first. Do as I say, don't do as I do. I could come in here and separate this flower, because if you're going to separate one thing, make sure you separate everything. So now I just need to make sure I have no white at all left in this mop. And I'll just come back in. And soften this. You don't want to leave lines. So blend it out. Should go from dark to nothing to light. And there's a bit of a line, so I'll just come in from the other side, you see, and make sure that it's soft where it meets the... So you can see that that makes quite a difference to the look of the piece. So when you see the final picture, you'll be able to understand what I've done. Now, that's probably about all I'm going to do on this piece. I may add some Payne's Gray around the outside edge, and I'll show you that in a minute. But just because I have those colors on my palette, I will show you the use of other colors in glazing. Colors, I'll pick up some of the turquoise that I have over here. And I could pull some turquoise into these leaves if you just watch for, well, that's quite a bit, isn't it? But that's okay. I'll dust it out. So there's a little turquoise added as a highlight. Now I don't want it to be so strong that it takes over the leaf, which it does. So I'll probably just blend this in, and then I'm going to wipe a little bit off. That's because I didn't correct the consistency of that turquoise when it came out of the tube. Still a little bright. And I'd have to come back in now and put that alizarin back in right so that it's so that's just adding a little bit of extra color. I probably would not do that on this piece, but I just wanted to show you that you can add other colors into the colors you already have. So I'm just going to take that off, and that's another thing you'll see is that very easy to correct this or make changes. If you don't like it, you just remove it. I'll put a little bit of liquid back on here. And then I'll just come back in with that alizarin again. So if I needed it to be a lot darker, I could add Payne's Gray to that alizarin and really deepen some of the areas. Again, if I did that, the lights would get a lot lighter. The more dark you add, the more you bring out the light. So you can see in that section's been glazed. When you see the final piece, you'll be able to see what I've done, and I'll probably do the whole piece pretty much like that. So on this border though, let's talk about that for a minute, because I'm not thrilled with the border. This is a black background, so I'm going to just come down here. I'm going to throw some liquid. Very thin coat, by the way. I think I mentioned that earlier, but and again, I'll just do this one section so you'll be able to see the difference. And again, when this is all done, I'll put a very thin coat of liquid over the whole piece, which will act as a sealer, a varnish. So this is Payne's Gray I'm going to put on my brush. And on the inside here, I'm just going to pull some just flat strokes. And again, you'll see that that changes the look substantially from the rest of the border. And again, I'll blend now. A little bit too much liquid, so a little harder to soften. And my mop is hardly touching the surface. I mean, I'm just skimming across the top of the surface. So I think when I go around and I do that all the way around, again, when you see the finished piece, you'll see quite a difference to the way the border looks. So I'll add a photograph, a still photograph to this, so you can compare before glazing and after glazing. Now I could add color to this border too if I wanted. I could have done that with alizarin crimson, but I just wanted that gold to be more connected to the black, so that kind of acts as that Payne's Gray acts to connect the colors so it's not hitting your eye so dramatically. So the other thing is on the outside edge, so that's around here, I can also add some glazing. And again, I would probably use Payne's Gray. So it almost gives it a more of an antique-y kind of look. And just pull it up slightly. And again, I'll mop it. I might go to my bigger mop now. So I'm not sure if you can see this, but I'm going to tilt this in a minute so you will be able to see it. So I don't know if this is showing up or not, but you'll see the difference between this half of the tray and then this half where I've added some Payne's Gray and just dusted it up. So some of those blotches that maybe some of you might be looking at and thinking that you don't care very much for them, I would certainly be able to get rid of those, as you can see, by just softening all around the edge here with some Payne's Gray. So other than that, I don't think I'm going to do anything else to this tray. Again, the final varnish will be liquid. And oh, there's my dog scratching again. And I think that's it. So if you have any questions, or if you're going to attempt something like this and it doesn't work out so well, because maybe I didn't instruct you carefully enough, then do just message me or email me, and I'd be happy to help you out. These trays are available on my website, heatherredick.com, and I'll be home in September, and at that point I'll be putting the remainder of the trays that I have in inventory on sale, and they're going to be very, very good price. So if you are interested in any of the trays, you can go to the website and order at that time. So I think that's it. Thanks for watching.